I'll start with my greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in England and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to see you. I recently went on a pilgrimage, and I should preface before I start giving a commentary on that experience. So I'm a Theravadan bhikkhu of 28, about to be 29 rainy seasons in age. And I was a novice before that, so 3 decades of living within the Theravadan form. And I would say I am happy practicing as a Theravadan. And I would say my practice is 85% inspired, influenced by, informed by the tradition that I live within. So the foundation of my life is having the Four Noble Truths as a reflective reference, having the cultivation of the four foundations of mindfulness as the intention of practice. Breath meditation is my main practice. We usually do at least 4 or 5 sessions a day. And arms around, live within the Patimokkha restraint, live with other bhikkhus. There are 8 monks here, 2 nuns at the moment. So I'm a good and happy Theravadan monk. Having said that, there's the other 15%, which makes me perhaps slightly unusual as far as Theravadan monks go, because I also have faith in the Mahayana and the Vajrayana, and I like to study Buddhism somewhat broadly, especially Buddhist practice. And I have an interest in pilgrimage, quite a strong interest in pilgrimage, and interest in devotional practices. So that is more of a kind of a adjunct to my main practice. And living as I do in Southeast Asia, there are many people of Chinese ethnicity in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Indonesia. And many of these people grew up with images of bodhisattvas in their homes, and then naturally just feel a sense of love, particularly for Kuan Yin. Most people just grew up with Kuan Yin on the altar, benevolent deity, someone to pray to, someone to have faith that there is goodness in the universe, and a loving, caring being who keeps an eye on things. So a percentage of my students, probably most of my students, tune in to hear me say comments on Theravadan practice, Theravadan suttas, lifestyle questions. And then there's a smaller percentage who have a sincere interest in these things, like I do. So tonight's reflection is more of that, more of a, I suppose you could call boutique. It's a boutique Dhamma talk for people with a special side interest in pilgrimage and devotional practice. And for myself, 3 decades into my Buddhist training, studying broadly, when one has an opportunity to explore a traditional practice from a different tradition, is just interesting. And one has a open mind and an interest of for example, so what I did was I went to 3 holy mountains in China, and I was actually researching because some of my students Chinese ethnicity students would like me to take them. And I don't want to just turn up in China without having been and checked out the place and try to work out, is it safe? What are we going to do? Can we do what we want to do? All those things. How's the weather? So it was a bit of a reconnaissance trip, but it was also a research trip, but it was also my own private pilgrimage also. So we went to Wutaishan, which is the sacred mountain of Manjushri Bodhisattva. and we went to a place called Tiantai, which is a historically significant place where the Tiantai school of Buddhism, which became an important foundation for Japanese and Korean Buddhism, and also masters like Dogen practiced in temples in that area. And then we also went to Putuoshan, it's Avalokiteshvara's mountain, which is actually on an island in the South China Sea. So why, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Why would one bother going to a holy mountain? It's another interesting question is, what makes a mountain holy anyway? What makes a mountain holy? And if it is holy, why would one go? And so I think, as someone who studies Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, even for us Theravadins, we don't have a Buddha without a Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva became the Buddha. And in the Bodhisattva's hundreds of millions of lives, they cultivated enormous virtue, enormous, incredible abilities, mountains of merit. And so there are naturally other bodhisattvas. And it's one of these things, people either have faith in them or they don't. And it's very interesting, there's quite a clear division. Even among my teachers, I know, like probably Ajahn Samedo and Ajahn Jayasaro wouldn't say there is, wouldn't say there isn't, might not even care. They're just kind of like, well, we have our Buddha. We have our present moment practice. We have our 84,000 Dhamma verses. Good enough for them. Great. But then I know there's teachers like Ajahn Amaro, Ajahn Pasano, who have met masters from other traditions who really respect them, and then they would be probably quite open. It's like if you meet other people who are respectable and you feel respect for those people, that also has a tendency to affect our belief system. And it's interesting, it's probably clearly split among the 600 million or so Buddhists in the world now. Probably about 300 million of them have an interest in celestial bodhisattvas. The Koreans, the Japanese, the Vietnamese, the Chinese, they are all like Kuan Yin, Siddhikapa, Manjushri, Samantabhadra. But then you have the Sri Lankans, the Burmese, Cambodians, Thais, and a lot of them just not that interested. But those ones are interested in Maitreya, though, because Maitreya appears in our suttas as the next Buddha. And if we don't manage to finish our work in this life, we hope, many people are hoping to meet him. But what makes a mountain sacred? It seems to be the case that how it begins is practitioners begin to have visions of a particular bodhisattva. So gifted meditators begin to have visions of a certain bodhisattva in an area. And then the way it works, monastic grapevine, other monks, other nuns are interested. He saw that. Other people will start to go there, meditate there, see, is there something special in that place? And then if there really is something special about the place, then that gains a bit of a momentum. Some monasteries may be established, some communities, and then what happens afterwards, sometimes an emperor may visit, and then some royal support happens, and then these places over thousands of years become recognized holy sites to a particular bodhisattva. So Wutaishan is interesting because it actually has a 2,000-year history. And many emperors made the effort to visit Wutaishan, which would not have been easy because it's a place that is prone to snowy blizzards for 7 or 8 months a year and altitudes of 3,000 meters, which is not especially high, but it's in a subarctic region as well. So it is prone to strong, long winters, strong winds. And so if you're on a highway, a really, really good highway going in a straight line, it takes 4 hours from Beijing to go to Wutaishan National Park. So how long would it have taken an emperor being carried in a palanquin to go from Beijing to Wutai? I would say a couple of months probably. And many of them did it. When you visit these ancient temples in Wutai, there's these plaques erected with dragons on top and grand writing calligraphy, and it says Emperor so and so came on such and such occasion and offered his royal support for such and such a monastery, etc., etc. So also a couple of the Dalai Lamas walked to or rode horses or however they did it from Tibet to Wutai and did long retreats there. So it's like, this is already interesting to me. It's interesting. If this is a place that is difficult to go to, but the Dalai Lamas go there for retreat and emperors go there to offer their support and seek blessings, there's probably something special about this place. In recent history, we have Master Shu Yun, Empty Cloud, really great biography if you can get a copy of it to read it. That was one really, really wonderful monk, one of my bhikkhu heroes. He did 3 steps, 1 bow from Putuoshan to Wutaishan all the way. It's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And Wutai means 5 terraces. So in Wutai, there are actually like 5 plateaus on tops of mountains. So you don't just go to one mountain, you have to go to 5. And he did the 3 steps, 1 bow up and down all of those 5 mountains also. So I thought, okay, well, this is a monk I really respect. And this is how much respect he had for Wutai. So I was interested. And I suppose, what does one get in going to a holy mountain? Why would one go? So Buddhists do believe in accumulating merit. Punya. Lord Buddha says merit is synonymous with happiness. Lord Buddha also said we shouldn't criticize people who seek merit because of that. Merit is synonymous with happiness. When we create the kind of opportunities we have in our life, the kind of opportunities we don't have in our life, that's our merit. These things have causes. And I was recently on the way down to Bangkok, I was stopping off to look at some lighting for Thanajan Anand because of building a new kuti for him. And I just thought, one person contacted me. I was just in a place where there's a lot of nice stuff, Chatuchak markets. And one of my Malaysian students contacted me and says, I want to offer a Buddha statue for Ajahn Anand for his kuti. And there was a beautiful Buddha there. And just when I'd had that thought of, okay, we'll get this Buddha for Ajahn Anand as a sponsor, another person contacted me by a text. I've got this Buddha statue I want to offer. Will you accept it? So I had not announced to anybody. And I just decided that this is the Buddha I'm getting for Thanajan Anand. And someone else is contacting me saying, can I offer a Buddha statue, a big one? I just give that as an example that I would suggest that that's Ajahn Anand's merit. That I'm just thinking, I want to, okay, let's get this Buddha statue for Ajahn Anand. People are contacting me saying, I want to offer this Buddha statue, can you accept it? That has to come from a cause. And the cause is probably merit. Thanajan probably has significant merits. And so that was interesting. Anyway, I'm going to show you some photographs now, and I'll continue to ramble along. I hope something I say might be interesting. And I guess one thing I wanted to talk about was like mystical experiences. Like what is a mystical experience, and why would anyone want to have one? And it's a tricky subject to talk about because sometimes people want them for the wrong reason. And sometimes people can get too fascinated with them. Sometimes people really want them and they don't happen and they can get dejected. But I think one of the things I would describe a mystical experience is if you have an experience that kind of reveals a more subtle reality, broadens your habitual perceptions about things, expands your consciousness. This can be enormously helpful because we tend to be stuck in our habits. And so if you have an experience which is consciousness expanding and shows you a different perspective on reality, this can affect the way we hold our reality. So this is, probably why a lot of people do retreats. You're going to go have a retreat. You want to have a good experience, want to have a more peaceful mind than normal, want to have some insights, want to get a break from ordinary tediousness of life. So when people go to holy places that people have visited for millennia, this is the kind of thing that can increase your chance of having a what we might call a mystical experience. So that could be a vision a vision in meditation, or a dream, or just a feeling. I have another friend that just got back from Mount Kailash. He did the Ajahn did the circumambulation, walking at 60 kilometers in 3 days at 5,000 meters altitude. And he said he was blissfully happy most of the time, even though it's exhausting. Deep breath every 12 steps, he's panting. But he said just the sense of space and openness and brightness of the sky, even though it was -7 at night and maximum of 10 in the day, and 20% less oxygen. And yeah, he said he felt that was the most holy place he'd been to, and he felt like he was at home. And I think if a monk does something like that, goes to a mountain, Bhutan is similar, where the sky is just so vast and so prominent, and one has really, really spacious mind states where one sees one's thoughts, in a wiser perspective, as not all consuming, as not that important, as that not worth taking that seriously. Then it gives us a sense of perspective, context, a more spiritual context. There are those teachings like to see thoughts like clouds in the sky and pay attention to the sky, not to the clouds. So when we go to environments that support that kind of contemplation, can have some very beautiful, spacious mind states. And then when one comes back to one's life, then you have that as a recollection, can remember the Himalayan sky. So yes, let's look at some pictures. Xiantong Temple, first built in 68. So what's that, 1,950 years ago? It was just gives you a sense for how old it is and how many different emperors. It was first called Dafu Lingjiu in the time of Beiwei. I don't even know who that is. Then it was Da Huyan in the Tang dynasty. In the early years of the Ming, it was called Daziantong, while in the year of Wanli, it was called Yongming. In 1687, it was called Daziantong Temple again. The temple takes an area of etc., etc. It's large. It is the biggest temple in the Wutai Mountains with the longest, etc., etc. So let's have a look at some pictures. This is just to give you a sense for the historical context of it. There's a very old statue of Manjushri in front of this temple riding a lion. Apparently some great master had seen Manjushri riding a blue lion. And you're not allowed to take a picture of it, but this is a picture of a statue, so I could give you a glimpse of what the statue inside the temple looks like. I went to Wutai for the first time last year, and something interesting happened. As I was falling asleep, I'd just fallen asleep, and a blue lion came galloping towards me in my dream. And I didn't know yet. But I went to the temple the next morning and I said, oh, there's a blue lion there. So, and the temple with the blue lion was about a kilometer away from where our hotel was. So there's a valley area, and looking up there, you'll see a temple in the middle. There's a staircase of 1,080 steps. It's quite steep, and there's some little cave temples down here at the bottom. So the valley area in the Wutai historical park is about 1,500 meters elevation, and the mountaintops are about 3,000. One emperor came and he didn't know that he had the energy to go to all 5 terraces. So apparently one very gifted monk told him that if he could ascend just this one temple, it would count as visiting all 5 terraces. And there is 5 images of Manjushri, different forms of Manjushri. Manjushri, by the way, is famous for having the foremost quality of wisdom. And so we actually did the 3 steps, 1 bow practice, Chai Ek and I, up this 1,080 steps, a couple of days after arriving. Next, Jesse. This was my note. I had some experience in China that if you try to speak to them in a different language, they kind of reject you. You're not part of the family. So I tried a new strategy this time. I had a note written in Chinese, and the note says, I am making pilgrimages to the holy mountains, and I would like to sit meditation quietly to the side somewhere for an hour. Would that be possible? I did something else different this time as well. I actually got a Chinese style robe. And what was interesting was we went to the monk robe shop, and there was one robe in my size and my color, which was interesting. We're talking a little bit about karma and merit. Like, there are not that many 192 centimeter Chinese people, but there was one robe there. And the reason I did this was because they don't get many Theravadan monks there, and we just look a bit strange. Not only that, the way the roll of our robe works, if you bow from a standing position, your robe falls off. And you have to bow 3 times. So that means putting your robe on 3 times every time you bow, which gets a bit wearying. So as they happen to have a robe in my color, in my size, we went with that. And I found it was a very good strategy because I think it became more difficult for them to say no to me. It was like being part of the family, recognized as part of the family, wearing the same clothes as them and handing them a note. And then 9 times out of 10, they would let me sit quietly to the side. And that hadn't been the case on previous trips. So as a strategy, it worked. And some people may find fault with that, but for myself, it's being practical. I'm going there to meditate. And so I wanted to meditate. So this time I caught a flight to Wutaishan. It has an airport. It's about an hour's drive. And so we caught the plane, 6:15 in the morning. This is one of the little chedis in that Tong, 2,000-year-old temple. Very interesting design. It's kind of a fusion between a Chinese and a Tibetan. Because Tibetans have a lot of faith in Manjushri, there's a lot of presence of Tibetan monasteries and Tibetan monks here as well. Traditionally, there has been. Okay, so this is interesting. There is a dragon prince, I suppose. The dragon king's 5th son is considered to be the protector of Wutai Mountain. You go to the next picture, get a closer up picture of him. So he can manifest in a human-like form. There he is with his beard, etc. And he has dragons on his robes. So there's a huge amount of interest in paying respects to the Dragon King. And I guess people are asking for lottery numbers and job promotions and whatever it is that you ask for dragons, for dragons. And I did not ask for anything. I just walked past him and said, "Hello, sir. I'm not going to bother you. I'm going to give you the gift of not asking for anything." And so we walked respectfully past him and went and paid respects to the Manjushri Bodhisattva shrine. So this is the Daziantong Temple entrance. These nice red lanterns. You come into these places, it's a little bit hard to describe. There are often 800-year-old trees, centuries-old pine trees. Like one of the places I went to had a 1,250-year-old plum tree. Another one had an 800-year-old ginkgo tree and a centuries-old magnolia trees. So it's really, there is something special about walking into a place that has had devotees and practitioners practicing for millennia. And the Chinese seem to do a really good job of rebuilding and renovating things in the same place so that they feel old. And some of these items in the monastery are going to be very, very, very old. Some of them maybe not so old, but they look traditional, so it all works. Here in Thailand, if you visit Sukhothai, you'll basically see some stones, posts, and some old mortar, but nothing else that was 900 years ago. But in China, you're walking in again and again, a 1,400-year-old temple, a 1,700-year-old temple, a 2,000-year-old temple, and with the plaques from the emperors, etc. It is special in that regard. One feels the faith of all of the people who've practiced there and helped to build these places, and it is steeped in blessings. The next picture shows how cold it gets in winter. So this is the valley down below where the stupa is and these various temples are. I find it amazing that anybody lives there in winter, but evidently they do. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Probably very, very peaceful at that time. No pilgrims. So, This is a picture from about 20 years ago. So this is a picture of a picture. And I just took it when we were going in through the, past the, there's like a boundary they have to go through. I just took some pictures of these. So this temple at the top with the yellow roof is a Tibetan temple. And if you look down below, there's another monastery with a gray roof. That was like a Tang dynasty temple. And then the one right down the bottom with the red, that would be the 2,000-year-old temple. So you just get the sense for temples being built century after century with different emperors and different Tibetan spiritual leaders. And it's much more developed than that now, but it just gives you a bit of a sense for the layout. Similarly, they're all monasteries and temples. So I found some real life peonies in the garden beds, and I was so excited because one of my hobbies is to paint peonies. And yeah, so I took some pictures, getting a sense for different types. Yes, so this is that temple, Diazang Tong. There's often a string of viharas or shrine rooms. There's often Maitreya Buddha and the four great kings as first, and then another one to the Bodhisattva, and then another one to the Buddha, often with Amitabha and Shakyamuni Buddha. And so this has many, many viharas. People will be asking, where are all the pilgrims? I heard China was crowded. There were really a lot of pilgrims, but I prefer to wait for quiet moments and try to capture something that looks a bit historical. So these are pictures of quiet moments, not of the Chinese crowds. You won't be surprised to hear that there are a lot of Chinese people in China. Last I checked. It was actually the longest sunny day. It was the summer solstice, and the temples had closed. It was 6 p.m., but the evening light was so lovely. So I wandered around and took some pictures. Often, you see this very often in the very front. You'll have two really ancient gnarled pine trees. Now, these are ordinary pine trees, but what happens is in a strong blizzard, they snap and then they grow out another side branch and snap again and grow out another side branch. And then they get this really kind of gnarly, antiquated, cool kind of look to them. Now, those plaques in stone, those were erected when different emperors visited. So this is to commemorate such and such an emperor. Okay, so we did the 3 steps, 1 bow. Photos aren't in perfect order because I just sent hundreds through to JC. And is there a picture of the staircase, JC, next? Or staircases? Okay, another staircase. Go forward, go forward. Yeah, there. Okay, there's a staircase. So there's 1,080 of these steps. It goes up quite steep, about 100, and then there'll be a little bit of a flat space and another 100, another flat space and another 100. So Chai Ek and I started doing our 3 steps, 1 bow at 4 in the morning. And we took our time, about 3.5 hours later. Can you go back to that picture, JC? And you'll see that there's a smudge on our foreheads. That smudge on our foreheads is proof that we've been rubbing our faces on steps every 3rd bow. And so this is at the top of the 1,080 steps. We made it. Yes. Here we go. A basic little bit. The temple covers this large area, 80,000 square meters. It preserves the basic architectural pattern of the Ming and Qing dynasties. The temple had 400 buildings, 7 main halls along the central axis. So there's the Kuan Yin Hall, the Manjushri Hall, the Great Buddha Hall, the Wuliang Hall, the Quanbok Hall, the Copper Hall, the Buddhist text library, etc. So you get that sense, a very big, grand complex with a layout of buildings in a long line. You can actually see I think there's a picture of the view. You can see looking back at that temple from the temple that we bowed up. Yeah, so there's looking down on the temple complexes. So more stairs. Wutai is hard for people who are not really fit, in as much as every temple seems to be these various buildings that I was just mentioning. They're often on a slope, so you're walking up to that one and up to the next one and up to the next one and up and then down and back and then you go to another temple and it's not just 10 or 15 or 20,000 steps a day. It's 10 or 15 or 20,000 steps up and down. So it's hard work. We found one challenge that we have in China is you're allowed to bow, you're allowed to offer incense, you're allowed to circumambulate, you're allowed to pray quietly standing up outside, but they don't seem to like to let people to sit quietly in the meditation halls. And that's quite strongly enforced. But as I said, because I had my note and I put on a Chinese robe, the monks would usually find a spot for me and allow me to sit. But as I said, there was a space for a monk. And I did have many peaceful sits and some lovely experiences, and I'm grateful for that. But this is just part of the reality of a modern pilgrimage in China. You do have the government that is very tightly controlling every aspect of people's lives. And there are CCTVs everywhere. So we came to the Chan temple, which just happened to be over the road from the hotel. And we spoke to the guest monk there. And I said, is there a place where I could just sit quietly here? And he was, being a Chan monk, he understood that I wanted to sit and he knew. And he pointed me to a place behind the highest hall where there were no CCTVs. And he told me, you can, because they're keeping an eye on who's coming and going, but this area, nobody's really coming. He said, you can come and sit here whenever you like. But he said that discreetly. So it's, one can go there being contentious and fault finding and getting upset about it, or you can go there and accept the reality and try to work out where the exceptions are, which is what I did. Sitting meditation in stealth without making a problem out of it. Oftentimes it was behind some grand statue, often in the last hall, like there's the cameras and the focus is on huge amounts of people passing through. And if it's the last statue in the last hall, there's usually a space behind the statue. And if I sat right behind the statue, out of view of the cameras and the people coming in and paying respects couldn't see me, and I could sit there for as long as I liked. Nobody knew I was there. So a little bit of a hint. So yes, okay, one of the other temples with the yellow ceramic roofs was called the Bodhisattva Peak Temple. I think it's like similar to Vulture's Peak. And this was a Tibetan practice called the Great Manjushri Temple. A Grand Lama settled this temple. So that was about 3 or 4 centuries ago. So because the Tibetans had respect for Manjushri and the emperors had respect for Manjushri, the emperors allowed the Tibetans to build their temples there for centuries. So it's an interesting fusion of architecture. You go up to the Tibetan temple and there's an image of Lama Tsongkhapa and there's wrathful deities. And you go down to the Tang temple and there's images of Kuan Yin and Tsitigaba in the Tang style. And it's quite beautiful the way they coexisted right next to each other harmoniously, at least for some centuries. Yes, you might get a sense for the steepness of the stairs. So it doesn't stop people though. This is in the middle of this picture is the chedi is being renovated. So that's the white chedi we've seen in some pictures. It's being refurbished. Cool ceramics on the rooftops, centuries old blue ceramic dragon. So some of the temples have blue roofs, some have yellow, some have gray, some of them have red. This is a Tibetan temple with a yellow roof. Okay, so this is our visit to the first terrace. So as I mentioned, Wutai has 5 terraces. And you usually have to hire a van, and most people will do it in one day, but it means you get about a half an hour in each of those 5 terraces. So Chai Ek was the Malaysian student who came with me and shared the experience. Chai Ek and I, with some help from his brother, were able to hire a van for 2 days. We went to 3 terraces on the first day and 2 terraces on the second day. So this is about a 1700-year-old building. And it just gives you that this is what the Eastern Terrace looked like to pilgrims 1700 years ago. It's made from stone and mortar. There's a big building in front of it now, which is modern. And we turned up, 20 minibuses turned up at the same time. So it's, but then after half an hour, they all left and we were still there. So there's like waves of tourists coming in. This is at each of the 5 terraces, they've erected an enormous rock that says this is such and such a terrace. I was the artistic director of most of these photographs. If you were taking the picture from the ground, you wouldn't have seen many mountains. So I asked our driver if he wouldn't mind standing on the roof of the minivan, and he was happy to do that. And we get a bit of a sense for the 3,000 meters approximately. Yeah, this was the statue inside. This is a 4-armed form of Manjushri, holding a bow and arrow, a sutta, and a sword of wisdom. I sat meditation here, and a monk came and yelled at me after 20 minutes. What are you doing meditating? Fortunately, I was peaceful. I didn't yell back at him. I could have said, well, in my country, we're allowed to meditate. What are you, a monk or a communist? But I didn't say that. I smiled. Yes, sir. Whatever you say, sir. So yes, you can see some of these old images. Just go back that one again. That's carved in stone. It's probably about 1,500 years old. So just imagine people have come from all over China, all over Tibet, all over Mongolia to bow their feet, and that black accumulated smoke from butter lamps and incense sticks. And I think they've lightened up the walls by doing this fun creative. I think they've got some kids to come and put their handprints on on the black walls to brighten it up a bit. But that's more of a Tibetan image, the one on the right, and the one on the left is the Chinese image, the Manjushri on a lion. Okay, very special place. I think this monastery is at the Zulian Monastery. This was called the Bamboo Grove. It's interestingly enough, bamboo does not grow in Wutai because it's too cold in winter. But they called it the Bamboo Grove after the first monastery of Shakyamuni Buddha. This is a very special place. Apparently, when it was an ancient monastery, I think it had up to 5,000 monks. So when I sat meditation here on both occasions, I've had a very nice meditation. And this stupa that we're looking at, the white one, is apparently contains one of the relics sent by Asoka. I believe he sent 12 Buddha relics to China, and this is one of them. And this is a Pure Land tradition. And I usually time my visit there so that I can sit while the monks are chanting inside. I sit outside on the balcony, and very nice, beautiful Buddhist art, very lovely. I think the renovation has followed the traditional map of the original monastery, if I recall. This is back at the Eastern Terrace. This is back at the Bamboo Grove. So you can't quite get the sense for the scale, but what I love about this monastery is one of those places where big open sky is very prominent, and very, very beautiful sculpture, relief in stone. So yeah, you come up past one hall and come up past another hall, and this is their chanting hall. Some of the beautiful sculptures. This is back at the Eastern Terrace. Back at the Bamboo Grove. Yeah. Okay, special place. This was the Northern Terrace, and I think these buildings are quite old. The Northern Terrace is where the original dragon protector shrine was, and that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at the dragon protector of Wutai shrine. The monks here were really friendly. I walked into this shrine and a monk handed me a crystal ball with mantras inside. I was lighting my incense outside, and he insisted that I come and light my incense inside, and very sweet. And the other monks, when I went to the main hall, and maybe it's the next picture, I asked that inside there, I asked the monk if I could sit quietly to the side, and he said, yes, you can. I had a very nice meditation there. So the northern terrace is the highest of the terraces and the coldest and most prone to snow, apparently. I want to share some things with you, but I have to be really careful with my speech. But monks' rules. So monks are not allowed to make claims that they have divine eye if they don't. And we're also not supposed to talk too much about experiences, but I kind of feel there must be a middle way about it. There must be a middle way with it. Like, to experience something visual in meditation sometimes is not making a claim of having a purified divine eye. It's not making a claim of having psychic powers. And sometimes I get worried that if nobody ever talks about some of the nice results of meditation, that people might think nobody ever experiences it anymore. And there's some danger in that as well. But I did have some nice visual phenomenon in this place, even though I only sat for half an hour. And yeah, I'll just say that much. And just to say, but if a person is doing 10,000 mantras a day, as I was, and if a person is doing 3 steps, 1 bow up, very long staircases and things like that, and finding places to sit and sitting, if one goes with the mind of a pilgrim, a devout pilgrim, practicing one's religion sincerely, then I think the mind is going to be in those periods of time more likely to have mystical experience. And I would say that's just a normal result of strenuous efforts in special places that a lot of people could experience. So I'm not making a special claim. But I am saying it is nice when one sees / meets something nice in meditation. And this is I think the original very old image of the Dragon King that was replicated down in the valley later. Same with him. I said to him, Dragon King, I'm not going to ask anything for you. You must be so annoying, all these people just asking. In fact, I'm going to dedicate some of the merit of my pilgrimage to you. May you be well, may you be happy. And what is interesting, though, is it didn't rain on us the whole time we were there. And it rained the morning that we were leaving. And then when we went to Putuoshan, it had rained for a week, but the day we arrived, it didn't rain. The day after we left, a storm blew in and the boats weren't working for 2 days. So I don't know for sure, but I think the Dragon King might have helped us. Once again, not making any claims. So these terraces are just littered with beautiful stupas, and it's become a bit of a thing that Chinese people will come and do a trek around the 5 terraces of Wutai in summer. So we saw a lot of kind of retired people doing their trek, looking quite tired because it's like 70 kilometers and they walk it in 3 days. So there are all these kind of exhausted retirees leaning on rocks and along all these mountaintops. But there are also young ones as well. And it's quite strange because it's like there's the traditional pilgrims and then there's like all these buildings that look ancient. But then there's these people with these kind of bright neon colors and lycra leggings and mountain walking sticks and kind of space age gear. They kind of look like they've just dropped in from a different planet, but whatever, each to their own. Yes, so this was the northern terrace. Those buildings are made entirely of stone. So, big incense pot. What I'd like to point out here is you can see behind in this white area, there's another stupa and some more buildings. So that's actually the central terrace You get a bit of a sense for the space between the terraces. So we're looking now from the northern terrace way over there to the central terrace. And they're at a similar height, flat spaces on top of mountains. A stupa to a great master, apparently, and you do see people circumambulating. My friend took a picture of him. Nice earrings. Another of the terraces. So this is looking back at the eastern terrace that we'd been at the morning. And we come to the northern terrace. We're heading towards the central terrace to get a sense for the distances, the space. One of the images. Discriminating wisdom, discerning awareness is what the sword represents. So this is the central terrace that we've come to now. This is an amazing place. This is like kung fu movie, like palace, emperor's palace, kung fu movie. It's so, the picture doesn't quite capture the size and scale of these buildings, but like the red of the walls, the yellow of the roof, I think there's a picture that has Chayek and I standing in front that shows you a bit of a sense for how big it is. There we are. Yeah, so that's the meditation hall. And yeah, that's a really, really big building. A very, very yellow roof. And there's like stuff like this all around you. Was there one with the Devas just behind the dancing? There's one with the dancing celestial maidens. Yeah, there they are. These statues are like 5 meters tall in bronze. These are celestial maidens playing instruments. Just the scale, it's really quite special. And what's interesting as a foreigner going to this place in China is no one speaks any English. It's really, a lot of the world is becoming similar now, but when you go here, you're really going somewhere different. Now, of course, when they see me wearing a Chinese robe and bowing like a Chinese person, they talk to me in Chinese, assuming that I can speak, but I couldn't. I had to depend on my trusty friend and translator. Back to the big rock, JC. It's a big rock. Maybe the other way. Yep. So this is in front of the central terrace. This central terrace could also be seen from where we'd done the 3 steps, 1 bow, the 5 Manjushri's place lower in the valley. You could also see this central terrace. On the way back, there happens to be a big pagoda built in the Tang dynasty, I believe, which also had a Buddha relic in it, apparently. Just like, that's the wonderful thing about Wutai. Wutai is quite magical because you go around a corner and there's another fantastic ancient thing from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 centuries ago. It's just, it's quite, quite magical. Oh, another Buddha relic. Oh, another Buddha relic. Oh, another Buddha relic. And yeah, it's really, really wonderful to be able to. We actually did a chanting puja here. And in the places that are less busy, it's a bit more relaxed about chanting and sitting. So opportunities can open up. This was the next day. This is the southern terrace. Sometimes the different monasteries have a different theme. We're using a lot of white marble in this one. Yeah. The southern terrace had a more of a gentle, maybe it wasn't as high, it had a more gentle, more green, less austere kind of a vibe than the northern terrace. They all have their own kind of feeling. This one was quite soft and gentle. The northern was kind of just felt powerful, austere and powerful. So it's a lovely Manjushri statue holding a sword made of white marble there. standing image. So yeah, inside apparently, no, I don't know how this works, but apparently Manjushri meditated in retreat inside this hall. So was that an incarnation of Manjushri? Was it an emanation body? I don't know. But a lot of these things are folklore, and it's a very, very old building, and they say that Manjushri meditated in retreat there. So anyway, it's nice to go and pay respects. And when you're paying respects to a bodhisattva who's foremost in wisdom, you make the aspiration to grow in discernment and right recollection, have good memory, be fast to learn, those kind of things. And so we were making those kind of aspirations and dedicating merit with everybody who supported us to be there. You can see we really experienced fabulous weather. It was really great. Again, the 5 Manjushris portrayed slightly differently and all in white marble here. Lovely panoramic view. That's the big rock down below. Okay, here we are. The last of the 5 terraces is the western terrace. This is looking from the western terrace back at the central terrace. So kind of in a line, west and central and east. I really love these old stupas made of piled up stones. I've just been there. Imagine how many storms they've weathered and probably contain some fabulous relic or other. I don't know, but we just bow and circumambulate. So these are the original little viharas, very, very old. Often have stone images inside them. This was a different. Going to go to the next picture, JC, to see if there's another. Yeah, okay. So in this building to the right, this was at the end when we'd completed the 5 terraces. There was no CCTV in there, and it was kind of falling apart under renovation, and bigger buildings were being built. So I found that I was able to sit in there undisturbed, and had a nice sit, and once again had a nice meditation experience. But that's all I can say. But I do think that merit that accumulates in the mind makes the mind more receptive to these things sometimes, plus the focused practice. And come and see me one-on-one, ask me about these experiences, I might tell you. So another temple, this was actually a replica of the Jokang, which is the most important, oldest Buddhist temple in Lhasa in Tibet. Now, because of the situation in Tibet with the Chinese occupation / whatever you want to call it, it's a bit sensitive, so they don't let Tibetans live or stay here. But there were some sweet and nice monks in there, and they did allow me to do a puja in front of the replica of the Buddha from the Jokang temple. Is a picture of that Buddha in there, JC? There's a lovely Buddha with a golden face. Yeah, this one. So he was about 7 meters tall, maybe 5 meters wide. Beautiful headdress. You're technically not allowed to take pictures, so you have to sneakily take them from outside. And then the door obscures part of him. But anyway, he seemed happy that we arrived, and he was smiling. And I did my bow, I did my chant, and I dedicated merit. May all people in China and Tibet have religious freedom. And, yes, here we are at the southern terrace. Western terrace, sorry. Western, the last terrace we went to. So we went to the east, north, and central on the first day. And we went to the southern and the western on the second day. Altogether, we spent 5.5 days in Wutai. After that, we traveled to Hangzhou from Shanghai. Yes, lovely lotus paintings and chrysanthemums and peonies. So I stumbled across this lovely small nunnery where the nuns were tending to lovely peony flower beds. And the nun there allowed me to take more pictures of more peonies. So they start off as that pink, bright pink color, and as they get older, they fade to the pale pink color, similarly to the lotuses. Don't need to read that. Next. Okay. This is another of the important ancient temples in the valley. This temple, Bishan, I think it's called. This temple is where the Bhikkhu Patimokkha was translated from Hindi to Mandarin. And they had an ordination hall made. And I believe the Tang emperor then required that anybody going forth in his kingdom had to go forth in this place and receive some training before they went elsewhere. So very important place with regards to good standards of monks. And as you can see, there's one of these plaques at the front commemorating, might have been that emperor's visit. I have a very interesting feeling when I come into this monastery. There's always a kind of a coming home feeling. I wanted to go back and check when I walked into the gate. Did I have the same feeling I had last year? It's my second trip. And once again, I did. It just feels so familiar. And an interesting thing happened. I walked up the stairs, past one hall, past another hall, to the highest hall, and there was an old man sitting on the balcony outside of his kuti. And I showed him my note. I think he was 80, and I think he'd become a monk at 60. And I showed him my note. I'm on pilgrimage. I'd like to sit. And he walked into his room and he put a meditation cushion down for me. And he pointed to the meditation cushion. And he pointed to his tea on the table. And he says, "There's the tea. There's the water. There's the kitchen. Make yourself at home." And he went outside and sat in the sun and did his mantras. But it really, that feeling I had of coming home, and then this old monk is like, "There's your seat, there's your tea, make yourself at home." It was interesting. That only happened in this one place. And it's been a significant monastery for probably 1700 years, I think. Yeah. There's my nun friend with her, proud of her peonies. She wouldn't smile for the photo, though. She didn't want it. This is the courtyard that I met the old monk. He was a bit shy. I didn't take a picture of him, but very sweet monk. Yeah. I got a new mala, a bit of a reward. The man in the shop offered me half price, and then Chai Ek offered to pay half of that. So from the travel fund of Ajahn I only needed to come up with a quarter. Couldn't resist. Amber, Burmese amber. Isn't it lovely? Mm. Okay, so this is down below the stupa that's being renovated. Here's a picture of some of my favorite things. Okay, so this was my favorite secret meditation spot, sitting behind there's this 1,000 Manjushri statue, and the last hall in this big monastery, which the CCTV couldn't see. And if I sat in the middle of him behind his 1,000 arms, the people paying respects to him couldn't see me either. So he felt like a real friend. There really are 1,000 arms there, by the way. I didn't count them all, but I'm just going to trust. There are a lot of arms. Because what you can see behind, you could also see in front, like layers and layers of arms. And it's quite a rare form. I think this is the only place that has the 1,000-armed Manjushri. But he was my friend. He gave me a place to sit and protected me, and I was grateful. So I took that picture as a memory, memento. Again, another ancient image of Manjushri that would be in the Manjushri hall in the same monastery, riding a lion. The peonies. Okay, this is a different place. So we've gone to Hangzhou. I should tell you the interesting. Shanghai is, wow. So we come down from this mountain and we come to Shanghai. I hadn't quite realized that Shanghai has a population of 30 million people. So more than the population of the entire nation of Australia, and where I grew up. And so we land in the airport and we have to get to the train station. And and our flight was delayed 50 minutes. So we did have an hour and a half, but then we didn't have much time up our sleeve. So we go and we get there like basically just in time. but I can't really didn't have time to take pictures, so I can't really describe it to you. But Shanghai train station is easily as big as Sydney Airport. It's just Sydney International Airport. It's just huge numbers of humanity going in, but they were all very well behaved, quiet. It was clean. It was air conditioned. No pushing, no yelling, and just huge, massive humanity moving through this thing to catch a speed train. So the train from Shanghai to Hangzhou, I think it only took an hour and a quarter, and more than 300 kilometers. And we got there just in time. And Chayek thought that our carriage was the first carriage. So we ran and ran and ran to the first carriage. Then we got to the first carriage, the 16 carriages. We realized that our ticket was actually the last carriage. And then and then the train took off and it's going 300 kilometers an hour. And we're like, we had to make a decision. So it turns out that in front of the toilet cubicle is a large spacious area. And because it's China, the modern China, there was no noticeable toilet smell. And so I still had 5,000 mantras to do to complete my mantra goal. I wanted to do 75,000 Manjushri mantras. So I just plopped on the floor in half lotus in front of the toilet, looking out the window, finished my mantras. And in no time, we were in Hangzhou, a city of 8.5 million people. So here in Hangzhou, we went to the monastery of the white-clad Kuan Yin. So apparently a monk had a vision of a piece of wood that was glowing, and Kuan Yin had appeared in a white-clad form and had told him to go and get this piece of wood and carve an image of her in that. Many people are familiar with that image of a Kuan Yin wearing white robes. So we went there. They allowed me to offer flowers, but they did not allow me to sit meditation. So I did my usual trick. I walked to the highest hall and went round the back, and I sat meditation. By the way, this is our friend, one of my students and friends, Shunfu, Ted from Singapore. He met us to help us in this leg of our journey around the Hangzhou and Tiantai areas. So I think there's a picture of the sweat mark that I left. Coming down, yes, this is my, after meditating behind the meditation hall, there was no breeze there. So it turns out that June is a great time. July is a great time. The last week of June is a great time to visit. Middle of June, last week of June, great time to visit Wutai. But if you come down to the central plains, or you come down near the coast, although it's only 31 degrees, it's 90% humidity. So 90% humidity doesn't mean much if it's less than 25. But once it starts to be 29 and 30 and 90% humidity, it means a lot of sweat. So another place, there's a park outside of Hangzhou with all these lovely crystal clear lakes. Apparently it's the place where Arahant Qigong passed away. He's an interesting figure in Chinese folklore, kind of a crazy wisdom character that apparently, I think what it is these different characters come up, and sometimes if things are not balanced, they will bring them to some kind of balance. And so probably under the Tang emperors, when everything was strict and everyone had to get their vineyard training, etc., he he was famous for drinking alcohol and eating dog meat. And that upset everybody because it's supposed to be a pure vegetarian monk. But apparently he had something, there he is. Apparently he had something at his throat that would purify elements as it passed his throat. So the alcohol turned to water and the dog meat turned to some pure element. And whether you believe it or not, it is said that Arahant Qigong could throw up and gold plate objects with his vomit. So it worked both ways. He could put impure things in and they'd become pure on the way down, and he could vomit things up and they would become pure on the way out. So whether you believe it or not, that is the legend. And apparently he passed away here. So beautiful garden. It was an ancient monastery, and but now it's a lovely garden. And there is a memorial to a scholarly monk from contemporary Buddhism. I think it was Master Zongyi or Dongyi. And there was a lovely memorial to him. He became the 11th Vinaya master in the Vinaya school. Again, you can't quite capture the scale. This image was quite huge. That lying down image is probably about 6 meters wide. The bamboo here was lovely. The place where we went to stay after Hangzhou this is the Arahant Qigong's ancestors' home. So we were just in the area of China where apparently he had been his stomping ground. So we paid respects to several places associated with him. Yes, Arahant Qigong's ancestors' home. Next, we went to the, what's it called? Guiqing, is it? Guiqing Monastery in Tiantai, the first monastery in the Tiantai Buddhist tradition. Keep scrolling, please. Yes, this one. It's very common that they have bamboo in front and then pine trees inside and then magnolias. I think it's to suggest the bamboo grove. Again, this is a place that's been a temple, I think, for 1700 years. And again, a really wonderful feeling of walking into an ancient place of practice. This was on Tiantai Tiantai Mountain. Here's my student and friend, Ted Ang Shunfu, as we know him. Ancient entrance. So there's a pagoda, 1400-year-old pagoda still standing, covered in moss. And this was built in commemoration of the great monk Zeyi, who was the founder of the Tiantai school of Buddhism. This Venerable Zeyi became renowned as being one of the greatest synthesizers and systematizers of Buddhist thought. He was bringing in influences like Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka from Nalanda, and he had it would seem to be a good combination of strict vinaya, a lot of practice, and sound middle way teachings. And then they had, I think, 12 branch monasteries in that area, Tiantaishan Mountain, and monks came to study from Japan and from Korea, and what they learned and practiced here became the foundation of those schools in Japan and Korea. So it's really wonderful sometimes to just pass through these places and recollect that the great practitioners who have a lot of accumulated merits, they integrate their wisdom and they reinterpret things and present things in a way that's suitable for the current age, both incorporating things from the past but making it workable for the present. And then the implications of that, like that became the foundation of different schools of Buddhism in different nations. And to this day, there's monks practicing there. And there was in the gift store, I was very happy to see there were texts available to buy in this monastery. It's not something you saw in Wutai. I think when you get further away from Tibet, there's less control and less concern. It's a bit more tolerance of Buddhist practice. There's a certain type of I was so excited to see magnolias. It's another thing that I paint. There's a certain type of magnolia tree called the Southern China magnolia. And like most magnolias, it loses its leaves and it's covered in flowers in spring. But it also has this curious anomaly where it still flowers a few flowers all throughout summer. And the flowers are up to 25 centimeters wide. So there's just these beautiful, huge white blossoms in the middle of these trees that I got a little bit excited about. So apparently an Indian monk had a vision of 500 arahants. And I don't know if he drew a sketch of them or not, but there really is a 500 arahant hall where you can just wander around and look at these different images of arahants. And we saw 3 of these things. And I felt like I found one that looked a bit like Lumpur Biek, and one that looked a bit like Lumpur Nan, and one that looked a bit more like Lumpur Cha. I didn't find any that looked like Lumpur Achalo. Not yet. Gui Qing. Yes, and this beautiful lotus was in bloom. So lovely. That's the royal lotus. And this is the 1,250-year-old plum tree, which still blossoms. Apparently, during the Cultural Revolution, it stopped blossoming. And then when they started to allow some Buddhist practice, it started blossoming again. So, pagoda in the distance. Yeah, I thought this one looked like Lumpur Biak. Biak has quite a high forehead. I think there's a Tang dynasty images. So this was to commemorate Master Zeyi. So you can go in and pay respects to the founding teacher of the lineage. More nice lotuses. I thought this one looked like Lumpur Anan. To me, I thought it looked like Lumpur Anan. The friendly blue lion in there. So there's another monastery that we went to where they put his, so it's not uncommon for a great master to die in meditation posture and for their body to become a body relic. So the body doesn't rot and the body becomes more and more dehydrated, like mummified. And they will put these bodies in a pagoda, but they will also take them out once a year and allow devotees to pay respects. So there's one of these in the holy mountain associated with City Kaaba, and there was one built for this monk. But what happened is after a year, they opened it up and there was nothing inside at all. So maybe one last miracle, he showed them the ultimate nature of emptiness. So, but the pagoda is still there and pilgrims still visit it. Small place, not so many pilgrims go. It was but we went. We were in Tiantai Shan, so we went. There's lovely paths made out of river rocks. This was the place where the Indian monk had the vision of the 500 arahants. So we went to that place as well. That was by a very lovely waterfall. I was kind of happy to see, and it made sense that many of the places that we went were basically monasteries in forests. And living in the forest tradition, most of the monasteries that I live in forests. So it was, oh, that's interesting. A nice waterfall in front of the monastery. Very lovely forested mountain, Tiantai. After this, we went down and paid respects to the. This place is. I've already mentioned several places where one of the relics of King Asoka were enshrined in a stupa, but this place became quite famous as the Buddha relic from King Ashoka Monastery in Ningpo. So we went there as well. That great monk I mentioned, Master Yun, used to go and practice here. So I wanted to pay my respects as well. Here they allowed us to chant and meditate to the side. When we were paying respects and doing that, a couple of the local monks, friendly monks, approached us and said that there was another special relic behind the monastery in the forest if we wanted to go and look at it. And so they took us for a walk, and it was the 5-colored relic of the, this is the walk back into the forest, the 5-colored relic of the 11th patriarch of the Pure Land School, I think. So they took us to where his relic was. We were able to chant and meditate there. It's the picture with the prayer flags, JC. So, yeah, this one. Yeah. I think the monks are there as well. A couple of monks. My monk friends, are they there? Yeah, these nice monks. I can't remember if it was Chan or Pure Land. Sorry, forgive me. But they took us there. A good, nice energy, lovely ancient pine forest. And just go back to those sculptures. You can see there's beautiful. There's like the birth scene and the leaving the palace scene and the elephant entering the Mahamaya's dream. And these are huge. These were about 10 by 4 meters tall. 10 meters long and 4 meters tall, and a lot of reverence and is given to Shakyamuni Buddha in this place appropriately. Then we went to another ancient temple, not from the Tiantai school, but from the Zen school. And apparently Dogen, who became a master in Japan, had studied here himself. So as we turned up, they were chanting the flower ornament sutta. And we were allowed to sit and meditate and listen to that. Beautiful old pine trees, beautiful bamboos, beautiful magnolias, beautiful ponds, often with carps swimming around in them. Allowed to sit, finally. Some places it was easy. Slightly sun-burned, but big, voluptuous magnolia. I think that big red banner says that they're chanting the flower ornament sutta. So, yeah. Cool picture of Kuan Yin that was in the hotel that we stayed at. Meditating Kuan Yin, minimalist. So after Tiantai and after Ningpo, the final leg of our journey was Putuo, which is the sacred mountain and island of Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. This was my fourth trip. First time I went there, I went with Tanajananan, and that was 20 years ago. And then I went a couple of years later with some students, and I discovered this very old staircase, and I did 3 steps, 1 bow up it, and I actually made a vow to do it 3 times. And I went back, I think it was 7 years ago, with some of my Malaysian students, and we did that. We did the bowing up the steps. Some people did 5 steps, 1 bow, some did 7 steps, some did 9. I did my 3 steps. But I still had to go back again and finish. So that was one of my items to tick off this time, was I had to do the 3 steps, 1 bow up of Kuan Yin's mountain for the 3rd time. And it gets harder every time, let me tell you. 18 years ago seemed easy. There's a beautiful lotus pond not far from the hotel where we stayed. You will see more and more lotus blossoms. So this is landing on the island. You'll see there's a very tall Kuan Yin statue in the back there. This is a very old gate where the ferry used to land, and people used to walk on this stone jetty. And it says, the Holy Land of the South, you have landed, or you have boarded, landed on the Holy Land of the South. Now it's a huge port, lots of different ferries, but they've kept the old gate there. There's a map of the island. So we went in the evening to the biggest temple in the center of the island called Puji. The temple's closed generally at 5, but the monks were doing an evening puja, so we enjoyed doing some walking meditation and mantras in the courtyard, listening to the ambience. This was the next morning, I think, taking a sneaky picture from outside of the sitting Avalokiteshvara with a crown, Dharma King, in Puji Temple. So we went at 5. We were there when it opened. We wanted to attend the morning chanting. Turns out the morning chanting begins at 4, and you have to get there at 3. So they open the door at 3. You have to pre-book. They open the gates at 3, and they close them at 4. And then you attend the morning puja for an hour and a half, hour and 3/4, and then they open the gates again for the regular crowd. So we got our coupons, made a donation, got our coupons, and offered our incense. And we come back the next day. I went back and took some more pictures of lotuses. This is early morning, probably about 4 in the morning. Summer, sun comes up early in front of Puji Temple. Nice boat. We that goes very fast. The first time I went with Ajahn and Nan, we were on this tiny little chugging kind of thing that took 20 minutes, and everyone felt seasick. But they've upgraded the facilities. There's strengths and drawbacks. When I went with Ajahn and Nan, there were maybe 1/50th of the numbers of tourists that go now. So it's a much more crowded experience than it used to be. That was one of the things we had to navigate. How do we make this an actual spiritual pilgrimage with so many day tourists? And we basically worked out that we have to get up very early in the morning and be at places as they open, or we have to go once they've closed. So this is Kuan Yin's, one of Kuan Yin's disciples, Lung Nu, I think her name is. She's the Dragon King's daughter, I believe. Lovely art there is. So yes, because it was so hot and so crowded, we were walking after the temples closed, but enjoying the sea breeze and the late evening cooler weather. Next morning, 3 a.m., going to the morning chanting. Now, we made a little bit of an error because it was so hot, I wasn't very hungry, but then I wanted to go to some temples. So we walked a big, long walk in the evening. And then I'd done many, many, many mantras. And then I couldn't quite fall asleep because my mind was bright from all the mantras. And then, so we had 3 hours sleep. And we went to I will tell you one more thing for those of you stalwarts who are still here an hour into this. I think Kuan Yin might have felt slightly, what's the word? She wanted to acknowledge our efforts, I think. That's my interpretation. Because we walked all the way to a couple of very special temples, but we met with closed doors. But I was, because it was closed, but it was so hot and so crowded, we didn't want to walk in the daytime. So I did my mantras all the way there and all the way back. So I did 12,000 mantras on this day. As I was falling asleep, or maybe I had just fallen asleep, I did see a beautiful image of Kuan Yin in my room, gazing down at me. She was wearing gold robes. She had very fair skin. She had one hand raised in blessing. And interesting, I've never seen a gold robed Kuan Yin with a red headscarf. So then I went to a Gemini and I tried to make an AI image of close approximation of what I had seen in my room as I was falling asleep. So I might have made it up. It might not have been anything, or it could have been Kuan Yin coming and saying, I see you. I appreciate your efforts. So yes, the beautiful images of bronzes all along the walkways, more lotuses. So I came back in the morning after the morning puja. As I was saying, we made an error. We had to stand through this 1 3/4 hour puja. And there was a lot of bowing, maybe 100 bowers bowing throughout. But I'd had a light meal and then I'd gone for a long walk and we'd sweated a lot and we hadn't slept much. And I was really faint, probably low in blood sugar. And so every time I bowed, and I've got more weight and more distance to go than most of those people. So every time I stood up, I felt like I was going to faint, like this black ring would come in from the sides. And so I had to make my whole puja was trying not to faint. Trying not to faint Nusati. So when I was bowed down, I have to breathe as deeply as possible. When I stand up, the black would come in from the sides and breathe in deeply again. And then the black would descend. And then it was time to bow again. Oh no, do it all over again. And so that wasn't a very joyful experience. But one of the things I was mindful that it was an honor to be there. And it's funny how these different thoughts that affect you. Like my thought that I was most worried about was I don't want to faint in the middle of the puja because it will upset everybody. I don't want, there was 100 monks and 300 lay people, so I didn't want the big foreign Westerner to kind of make a scene. So I was like trying very, very hard not to faint. And I did succeed. I didn't faint, but I'm like, if we're doing that again, make sure you get a decent night's sleep and make sure you have a cup of tea or something because you need some sugar. And but an hour and 3/4 in the morning puja, standing up, it's pretty diligent with 100 vows, 100 monks, many of them quite elderly. So they do their practice. Yes, now we had to do the 3 steps, 1 bow up this mountain. It's basically a 1-kilometer staircase. And so we left the hotel at 2 and we started bowing at 3:15. There's no cars there. You have to catch communal buses to keep the traffic down, but they don't start till 6. And we wanted to avoid the crowd and the heat anyway, so we started at 3:15. Basically, we did 270 steps in 210 bows. Would take 20 minutes, and then we'd rest for 10 minutes. And we had to do that 10 times. So it was about 700 bows. It took 5 hours. And I never have to do it again this lifetime. In the next picture, that was when we were 3/4 of the way. I allowed myself to dry down, and they sell these fans. You can kind of fan yourself. I cooled down a bit, and I sat in front of this big rock, which means you're 3/4 of the way. This rock says the Buddhist land, or the holy land where the sky meets the sea. And from that spot, you can actually see the sea. And they do appear to kind of merge because of the salty haze. And then we continued our way up. I kept feeling like, oh, we're almost there now. And then we go around the corner, I'd look up and I went, oh no, hundreds more steps. But we made it. Only took 5 hours. Okay, the next day, I decided to go back to those 2 temples that we'd visited late at night and paid respects at the door. This time we would be there at opening time. And this is not related to that. You can see, yes. So this is the temple what they call where Kuan Yin refuses to leave temple. Apparently there was a statue that a Japanese monk was trying to take to Japan. And I think the boat sunk several times and the statue ended back on the shrine. And it's a metaphor for the fact that the Mahabodhisattva could have become an arahant a long time ago, but chooses to stay to encourage others. Both Chayek and I felt there was a really, really strong stream of blessings in this place. And we did get there as the door opened. Yep. It was kind of in a Japanese style. Just around the corner is the Nanhai Kuan Yin of the Southern Sea, very, very large bronze statue. This had thousands and thousands and thousands of local tourists, and were offering joss sticks. But because it was very expansive and spacious, it was quite fun. It didn't impinge too much. And I actually found, because I'd been praying as I went along, may the Bodhisattvas please help me find peaceful spots to sit. And right behind the Kuan Yin, I noticed this little door. I noticed a monk walk through it, and I noticed a forest behind the door. And so we ended up walking through there, because there's probably a sign that says don't go in, but I can't read Chinese. So I just opened the door and Chayek says, I'm not following you. I said, fine. And Chayek followed me. And what you saw just before was the cemetery. There was a cemetery from an old man. And so we were able to sit near the cemetery. It's quite common for monks in forest tradition to do that. I wasn't scared of ghosts. I just said to him, I'll share some merit with you, mate. Thank you. So we sat there and shared merit with Mr. Yi, I think it was. So we were about 150 meters behind that statue, and there was this gentle breeze. We were away from the crowd and we're sitting on leaves. Nobody bothered us. And yeah, so that was a nice treat for the last full day. It's a very beautiful image. She faces the sea, and we got to sit quietly behind her in the breeze. More of those steps here. Probably, yeah, from here, I think it was. Meditating. We didn't get in trouble. Apparently, a security guard did see us and didn't bother us. So that was nice of him. On the walk to the staircase, this is coming out of like a laser LED light shone on the footpath. There's a bright golden lotus, pretty cool, right next to the gutter. So more steps. You get the picture. Quiet early morning walk we didn't meet anybody. Every 100 meters or so, we met a new cat. A lot of cats on the island. Okay, this is the last thing in this slideshow. I don't know who built it, but I don't know if it's the local government. I don't know if it's the national government. I don't know if it was a Buddhist fund. I don't know who built this, but some people decided to build a beautiful shrine to Avalokiteshvara, which is, and I at first I wasn't going to go there because I was thinking, no, I want to see the ancient stuff, the hallowed stuff, the soaked in blessings stuff. But we literally had a couple of hours available. Otherwise, we'd just be waiting at the airport. And I'm like, no, okay, let's go. And it was, I'm humbled to say, the most beautiful piece of building and architecture I have ever seen. And I don't say that lightly, I'm very fussy. So this building was stunning. Is there a picture of it from the front, Jesse? Yeah, okay, from the front it was there. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, okay. I don't know if you look up there towards where these black squares are, have a look at the size of the human being there. This building is huge. This building is huge. And so it's got a crown on top from the 5 Buddha families, I believe. And this is like an offering scarf. And this is a lotus. And then you show some of the pictures of the interior. There's an image of a 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara carved in sandalwood, I think. Yeah. So that's about 10 meters wide and 7 meters tall. And then there's these images of Avalokiteshvara in the sitting form as a male form with a crown, or it's a replica of the image on the island in the main temple. I think there are 108 of those in the roof. And the floor was mosaic marble. I don't know if there's that round picture, and there's a picture in front of you can see there's a big lotus in front of him, JC, that one. So this is all marble. This hasn't been painted on. This is all marble. This is like Taj Mahal quality marble mosaics and highest quality sculpture. The lighting in this place was just phenomenal. It was soft and warm. It was air conditioned. There was chanting in the background. And yeah, once again, you can't quite capture the scale, but it was phenomenal. It's like a dome within a dome. And people were allowed to sit quietly to the side and chant and meditate. And I was very glad that I went. I did some research lately. I saw a Chinese blogger said that it cost 10 billion RMBs, which is approximately $1.2 billion is what they spent on this, I guess, Sistine Chapel Vatican for Avalokiteshvara. And it gives me a little bit of hope that maybe Buddhist practice will really have a prominent place in Chinese people's lives. But at the same time, there's always this slightly creepy thing, not slightly creepy, properly creepy thing happening in China. You see how these images all have an auspicious cloud under them of the Avalokiteshvaras and these arches as well? That round circle in the arch and that round circle in the auspicious cloud. Same picture, JC. Same picture. Yeah. Okay. So in every middle of arch, there's a little black spot, you see. And under every auspicious cloud in the first row of statues is a little black circle. Those are all CCTVs. Yeah. So it's just a little bit creepy. And so you're allowed to practice, but you're definitely being kept an eye on. And I guess if people grew up with it, they hardly notice it. But if you grew up in Australia and you live in Thailand, it's definitely something different. When we were in the minivan traveling around the 5 terraces on Wutai Mountain, there were 3 CCTVs in the minivan. One facing the door, one facing the driver, and one facing all of the passengers. So that's definitely a big part of life in China. At the same time, some people have felt it appropriate to spend $1.2 billion making a beautiful temple to Avalokiteshvara. So one hopes that, whatever, we hope what we hope. We hope that people may have religious freedom and a little bit of privacy, maybe. And yeah. Show some more of the pictures, Jesse? Yeah, just beautiful. Everything in this building, the reason it's so expensive, like you're not looking at any concrete, everything is stone. Yeah. The lighting was just so beautiful. I think I couldn't quite tell. I think one of them was one of them is Mahasamaprapta, one of them is Avalokiteshvara, one was Siddhigava, one was Samantabhadra. I think you have to check by their crown ornaments, but very beautiful art. Yeah, that's the top of the dome with this lovely gold luminous light. So this modern new temple is called Avalokiteshvara's Dharma Dhatu. It's in Zhejiang province. And, very, very, very beautiful. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our. I think this is all in Carrara marble. These were like 15 meters high and 4 meters wide. These reliefs of these celestial maidens with offerings and playing instruments. Just the most stunning and best art sculpture that I've seen. It's really beautiful. So I was glad I went. Now one has to integrate whatever merits are accumulated, whatever insights one has. And a large part of pilgrimage is mudita, just mudita for the millennia of Buddhist practice who have come, appreciation for the great masters and teachers who regenerated and built up infrastructure, billions of people who've supported these temples, these practitioners. And we only know some of the names of the great masters, but there have been tens of thousands of great practitioners for millennia. And it's really nice to walk in the places where they've been and connect with that field of merit and that sense of refuge of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And one of the things I was doing throughout China in paying respects to some of their most sacred shrines was I was dedicating merit to the people of China that they may be able to practice their religion with more and more sincerity and more depth and more freedom, and then dedicating the merit of that with all beings. So I did complete my 3 steps, 1 vow up Avalokiteshvara mountain for the 3rd time. I completed that vow. I did complete my 75,000 Manjushri and 75,000 Kuan Yin mantras, and I share the merit of that if it produced any with all of you as well. I hope you enjoyed something I shared. And now I go back to my 85% Theravada life, having had my 15% supplement. And